Hello, good afternoon. My name is Lisa Beth Doyle. I'm the manager of health and wellness at AllWays Health Partners, and thank you all for joining us today. Past months have been very challenging due to COVID-19. While in recent weeks we've seen our country rise up in support of what is just and what is right, with all of this uncertainty and all of the associated fear, anger, hope, we're looking to offer resources to promote resilience, manage stress and anxiety, and ultimately bring us to a better place. Before I introduce our speaker, Sheri Damon, we'd like to take a quick poll to see what is most important and concerning to you at this time. One moment and I'll launch that. Okay, poll is open. Please go ahead and let us know what concerns you most at this time. All right, give us about 30 more seconds to make sure people can get their vote in. All right, so thank you everybody who voted. So what we have here, actually 50% of folks who responded said that they have safety concerns. Other top concerns are job or finances, solitude, being alone, and then a few folks have voted for quarantining with kids. And then actually we don't have a lot of folks who've said health uncertainty. So that's where we stand. Thank you very much. So now I'd like to introduce our speaker, Sheri Damon, who's a licensed mental health counselor. Sheri is the founder of Foundation for Learning and Inspiring Health and Healing. And today she will help us explore the 5 elements of health and healing that she uses to manage long-term disruption we're all facing. Using these core elements may help you create a sense of security, manage stress and anxiety, especially as we navigate this new normal. I hope you will enjoy today's presentation. And now I will turn this over to Sheri.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today and spending a little bit of time with me. So as you just heard, I have a practice. We have locations in Marshfield, Mashpee, and Pasadena, California. And we really work on holistic wellness. So we kind of developed this C.O.P.E.R model that I'm going to go over with you that has these 5 elements for health and healing. We're going to talk about the C.O.P.E.R model, and we're also going to talk about self-care and the promotion of health and wellness for your entire family. Talk a little bit about understanding the brain-body impact. And then we're actually going to practice a couple strategies because I really believe that experiencing is a great way to learn. So rather than me just throwing a bunch of information at you, which I will do in part, but I'll also take a pause a couple of times to have you practice it. So I always put this quote up at the beginning because I feel like it's so important to keep present in our minds that taking care of yourself doesn't mean me first, it means me too. And that's a quote by L.R. Nost. So we often think we all should be this, the super person, right? Who can balance the well-being of our families, family members, children, extended family relatives, balance all the activities that need to take place. And right now, maybe teaching and keeping our kids occupied if we have children, our workload, working virtually, the exhaustion that we're experiencing being on computers all day, plus all those chores and all the household stuff. And we think we should be able to balance all of that evenly and accurately and well. And we end up feeling a little bit like this. This is actually an image of Hercules being sucked into the river of death. When we're feeling super stressed out overwhelmed, scared, exhausted, anxious, it has an impact on our overall wellness. It affects our cognition, our ability to think, focus, our memory, our attention. It affects our immune system, our ability to recover from illness, our overall health, our ability to prevent illness. It affects our mood, how we feel in general. It affects our energy level. It affects our sleep and our eating. Many people that I've talked to during this quarantine period are saying, I'm not sleeping well. I feel like I'm eating really differently. Maybe I'm eating a lot at night, or I'm not eating well at all because I'm anxious. So these things are affected by being in a state of distress. It also can affect what you can actually accomplish in the course of a day. One of the things that I'm working on with our C.O.P.E.R model is really developing what I call a psychological insulation, an ability to sort of heal and or protect ourselves from the impact that stress can have on all of these areas. So to think about this in a little bit of a brain-body connection, why is it? Why is it affecting all of those areas we just talked about? Well, when we're scared, when we're going through trauma and witnessing everything we've been witnessing in the past couple weeks, and the sadness and the chaos and the fear that everybody is feeling, when we're living for 2.5 months in quarantine and it's unpredictable and it's scary, we're in this constant state of stress, right? And when we're stressed out, when we're anxious, our body responds, has this very primitive part of our brain that I call, the caveman brain. I didn't coin that phrase, it's not mine. Many people have called it that. But that part of our brain is designed for fight or flight, right? It engages what we call the sympathetic nervous system that sends all of the energy to our muscles so that we can run away and save ourselves. Our heart beats faster, our lungs pump, the blood goes through the body to the muscles so that we are prepared for fight or flight. But what happens when we're kind of living that way every single day? We're in this constant state of fight or flight. So what I talk with people about is, kind of to use the phrase, stop dissing yourself, is to really try to move away from disattention, just sort of being caught up in everything all at once. And we're going to talk about how to do that. Disconnection, feeling isolated, alone, scared, overwhelmed, and being disconnected from positive coping strategies, which can lead to dysregulation, which is that inability to manage or balance your emotions, which can lead to disorder and disease. And so instead, with the model that we're talking about today, we're going to talk about maybe if we pay attention, we're going to talk about things like play and mindfulness. If we start to shift and focus on connection, nature, people, animals, activities, it allows us to start to move into more of a state of regulation where we're able to manage our emotions and handle things and think a little bit more clearly, and allows for a sense of order, optimism, clarity of thinking. So think back to that primitive brain that I was just talking about, the fight or flight, blood to the muscles and the heart. That is the opposite of being able to think clearly. In order to be able to plan and predict and make sense of things and settle ourselves, we need this part of our brain. We need the prefrontal cortex, part of our brain that's really responsible for that. Memory and learning and all those other parts of our brain are located in other areas. I'm not going to get into a whole lesson on the brain, but just think that the brain is like in that fight or flight response, and those areas are not working as well. So if we allow for this regulation, if we allow for this order, that shift, then it's going to ease. It's going to lower our distress, which allows for health and healing. So this C.O.P.E.R model I'm talking about, here's the elements: connection, optimism, play, empowerment, and resilience. So I'm going to go through each of those and what I mean by that. So the first is connection. Connection is really important. As human beings, we are social creatures. our brain adapts because of social interaction. It's hard to shift away from distressing events, change destructive coping strategies maybe, until you have something else that you can focus on. So we can't just take away, I'm using this destructive strategy that I don't like, or that's not comfortable, that's creating illness for me. We can't just take that away if we don't have something else to put in there. One way to cope and change any of those negative behaviors or the thoughts or the worry and the distress is to create positive connections. So think about things that you might be able to connect to: animals, nature, music, books. So an example might be, I work with a lot of people that have disordered eating, and critical of their body and feeling really uncomfortable. And I have this little therapeutic farm. So they come and they visit the animals and they watch how they move and they listen to the sounds and they pet them and interact with them. And that connection starts to shift their brain away from the negative coping patterns or the negative connections and starts to create some positive new connections. Another example might be maybe you struggle with anxiety. And so the more anybody who has anxiety knows, the more you sit in that anxiety, it keeps almost feeding on itself, and the distress gets greater and greater. And so maybe you could take time out from that thinking process and connect with an old friend. Find out what books they've read lately or what TV show they've been watching, or maybe connect with a podcast, something that you like to listen to, or again, music or nature, any of those kinds of things, because those connections allow the brain to start to shift. The next element in the model is optimism. And when I say optimism, I do not mean pie in the sky, everything's great, just think about all the positive and life will be fine, because that isn't true. We've gone through some really difficult times in the past couple months and definitely in the past few weeks. And so optimism is about trying to work on that locus of control, like where you sort of feel the control. Everything happening to me, or with optimism, okay, I can figure out a plan for this. Negativity can be like looking at life through a funnel, right? It narrows and narrows, increases stress, increases stress. And as we feel more stressed and strained, we tend to need to soothe more. And when we soothe more, we might choose, kind of the quick choice might be some destructive coping strategies. So when we start to become aware of our own negative self-talk, something I call worrying forward, oh my God, what if this happens? What are we going to do when? Or worrying back, shoulding on yourself, right? Oh, I should have done this. I should have done that. Why didn't I handle it this way? Those can all increase our distress. And so if we think about starting to flip our thinking to the positive, so you see my little cartoon here, which I don't know the original source of this cartoon, but I just love it so much, so I put it in all the time. You see the turtle's upside down, and instead of lamenting that he's upside down, oh my God, I'm flying. That's kind of flipping it to the positive, right? Looking at it a little bit differently. And we can also change our self-talk away from self-attack and self-criticism. Go back to that primitive brain that I was talking about. Imagine if you're someplace and someone is constantly yelling at you or constantly attacking you, it's going to create that fight or flight mechanism, right? You're being attacked. You have to protect yourself. So if that attacking is coming from within, it's creating the same response. So being able to talk a little bit more kindly to ourselves and refocus our thinking. So an example I often give is just sort of a silly example, nothing relative to what's going on right now, is pie in the sky thinking would be nothing's ever going to go wrong. And then I get into my car and I start to head out somewhere and my car breaks down. And I could look at it and go, God, why does this always happen to me? My life is so hard, this stupid car, I'm never going to get this fixed. I should have just gotten it tuned up last week. I could do all that kind of thinking I was just talking about, that narrowing, which creates distress. Or I could think, okay, this is a problem and I have the tools to solve it, or at least have the ability to look for the tools. I have a friend who knows a good mechanic, or I don't really have money to fix it right now. I might have to carpool with a friend or walk to work or take the tea, or how could I switch this thinking and problem solve it? Because I have that ability to problem solve. Using an opportunity, I also might be able to flip it a little further and say, okay, well, I don't really have time to go get my car fixed, but I'm going to sit there while they fix this issue that's going on with my car, and I'm going to read a magazine. And I'm just going to see it as sort of a gift to take some time off, which is kind of a good way to think about it sometimes, right? Another piece of that positive self-talk is really having like a can-do kind of a perspective and talking to yourself a little bit differently. Instead of that attack, criticizing yourself, worrying forward, worrying back, to be able to almost coach yourself, encourage yourself with positive self-talk. If you're going to give yourself messages, at least make them positive. And I always think of the book, The Little Engine That Could, and the engine kind of going up the hill. I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. That has an ability to propel us forward. And we're looking to make progress, not perfection. This is a quote from the Dalai Lama, which I love. It is in the nature of the mind that the more we cultivate and familiarize ourselves with positive emotions, the more powerful they become. So the third element in the model is play. Our bodies and our brains need to pause for a break. We need to sleep at night to rest, allow our brains to prune things out, to recover. We need to allow our bodies to have breaks. So a lot of times when we think about play, we think, oh, that's for kids. That's how kids experience joy. That's how kids spend their time. But the reality is we can all build play into our life. Mindfulness, joy, laughter. It changes our bodies. So when I talk about mindfulness, what do I mean? Many people are practicing mindfulness. Mindfulness is an age-old, thousands of years old practice. It's been really brought into sort of modern Western society by people like Jon Kabat-Zinn and mindfulness-based stress reduction. But really, when I'm talking about it here, I'm really boiling down the simplest pieces of this. Mindfulness is about paying attention on purpose in the present moment without judgment. And we're gonna practice that in a second. This allows our brain to have a calming connection. Remember I was talking about that caveman brain and all that fight or flight? Well, that engages what we call our sympathetic nervous system, right? So that prepares us for fight or flight. In order to be able to plan, process, rest, digest, do any of the things that the rest of our body needs to be able to do, we need to engage our parasympathetic nervous system. And so things like mindfulness and sensory soothing allow that parasympathetic to come back online. There's been tons and tons of research on mindfulness and its healing properties. And just to kind of boil it down a little bit for you, mindfulness allows for an increased sense of balance and well-being. It has a potential for change in the relationship to one's pain. It allows for an increased awareness and better concentration. It allows for increased acceptance and clarity of what is. Kind of go back to my broken down car example, right? Scientific studies show reports of improvement in chronic pain, chronic illness, improved mood, better sleep, skin healing, reduced disordered eating, increased energy, and better health utilization. Mindfulness is about being fully awake in our lives. It is about perceiving the exquisite vividness of each moment. We feel more alive. We also gain immediate access to our own powerful inner resources for insight, transformation, and healing. And that's a quote by Jon Kabat-Zinn. So the other piece of this that I use a lot is using your senses. Our senses are a very active, important part of our brain. And I describe it to people a little bit like if I'm focusing on something that's making me super anxious and stressed, and then I have something that allows me to go, look over here, it shifts my brain a little bit. the best example I can give you is I'm giving you this presentation, I'm talking, you're listening, you're thinking, wow, this is wonderful. And then a skunk sprays right outside your window. No matter how interested you are in what I'm saying, your attention will shift very quickly to that very strong smell, right? That tells you how powerful that part of our brain that processes our senses is. So here's our practice piece. We're going to practice this a little bit if you're willing. I'm going to ask everybody to just take a moment to settle into your seat. If you're willing, allow your eyes to close. If you're uncomfortable closing your eyes, just allowing yourself to stare down at a point on the floor. Letting the brain take in as little information as possible. Notice yourself breathing. Breathing in and out at your own pace. Just noticing the feeling of your breath. Begin to imagine a peaceful place. Your peaceful place can be real or imagined. And begin to look around your peaceful place. Notice what you see. Notice the colors. Notice if it's light or dark. Allow your sense of sight to fully immerse in your peaceful place. Allow yourself to imagine what you hear there. What sounds are surrounding you? What do you hear? Allow yourself to imagine your sense of smell. Notice the scents around you. Allow yourself to imagine in your peaceful place your sense of touch. What do you feel? Is it warm or cool? Is there a dampness or is it dry? What do you feel? And the wonderful thing about your peaceful place is that you can return to it at any moment. It's your peaceful place. And so with that in mind, we'll slowly begin to open our eyes and come back into this space and just take a moment to notice. If you did the activity, did you notice if you felt a sense of calm, a slowing of your breath, a slowing of your heart rate? These are things that you can now take with you and continue to practice because practice makes progress. Another thing that I talk to people about a lot is having mindful moments. Right now, how many times a day are you washing your hands? Quite a few, I'm sure, right? What if every time you washed your hands, or many times when you washed your hands, you were able to do that mindfully? You're doing it for 20 seconds, right? Maybe you're singing songs with your kids, or you're just sort of noticing, did I get the tops? Did I get the bottoms? Did I get the betweens? While you're doing that, notice, what does the soap smell like? What do the bubbles feel like? What do the bubbles look like? You know, is there light reflecting off the soap bubbles? What does the temperature of the water feel like? It's an activity you were going to do for 20 seconds or so anyway. We could make it a mindful moment. I work with people who mindfully brush their teeth or mindfully drive their car. Notice the feeling of the steering wheel, the sound of the wheels as they're turning underneath your car, the sensation of the back of the chair holding you up. You're driving your car anyway. We could make it a mindful activity. The fourth element of the model is empowerment. And empowerment is a little bit about the feel good, do good phenomenon. Positive energy is created around and within each of us when good is occurring. By doing something good for someone else, we create a positive distraction for ourselves, and it reduces the focus on what's causing our distress. I use this technique a lot in my practice and get people engaged in doing different things. So, for example, people who are experiencing tremendous distress when COVID first started to turn towards making masks for other people, delivering food for other people, because that feel good, do good phenomenon not only connected them to other people, but helped them calm some of their own distress. We've had rallies and peace gatherings and events like that, which have connected people in pain and have them signing petitions and being involved in something that is good and that makes them feel good. And so that has a healing property. The final element, the fifth element, is resiliency. And so when we think about resiliency, what I ask people to remember is that we are all resilient. It's part of our nature as human beings to be resilient and to be able to bounce back. Sometimes there's a lot of stuff that gets in the way of our ability to bounce back. And I liken that to sort of a bulb in the ground, lots of snow and ice and cold, preventing it from being able to bloom. But when we have the right conditions and we really start to learn about our strengths and what we need, it allows that resiliency to come through, just like that bulb comes through in the spring when the snow and ice melt and the sun warms and the ground softens, that's able to come through. So we all have that ability. And I like to say to people that, and again, I don't know where this quote came from, but there's more that is right with you than will ever be wrong with you. And if you keep doing that, sort of recognizing that positive self-righting tendency, it helps encourage you to use these different strategies to create the right conditions. The other thing I like to remind people is that we have wonderful mindfulness cues everywhere we go in this country. They're red, they have 8 sides, and they have these wonderful letters on the front, S-T-O-P. And I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek, but the reality is, how many times, if you're in a rush or if you're stressed, do you get to a 4-way stop and just kind of go, okay, nobody's coming, and just almost roll right through it? And what would it be like if every time you saw that little red sign, you were able to stop, take a breath, observe, and proceed? That's a moment of mindfulness. So we're going to practice another mindfulness strategy that I love and is, again, really easy to do once you leave here today, because I call it head, shoulders, knees, and toes. And many people sang that song when they were a little kid or have kids they've sung it to. So head, shoulders, knees, and toes, knees, and toes. I won't sing for you. I'm not that good of a singer. But we're going to use that song to kind of remind us of different areas of our body that we can focus on. So again, if you're willing, allowing your eyes to gently close or staring at a point on the floor, begin to just focus on the top of your head. Notice any sensations you might be feeling. Notice if the top of your head is warm or cool. If you're feeling any pressure, tingling. Notice the area around your eyes. We hold a lot of tension around our eyes when we're squinting. Allow those muscles to just relax. Notice the area around your ears. Any pressure, sensations you might be feeling around your ears and into your jaw. Notice the muscles around your mouth, allowing them to soften. Notice the area around your nose, breathing in and breathing out, Just noticing the air moving in and out of your nose. Notice the sensations you might be feeling down the back of your neck and into your shoulders. Many of us carry tension in our shoulders. Allow them to drop a little further, rest and relax. Breathing into any tension, just allowing it to settle. Moving from your shoulders down through your elbows to your wrists and your hands. Just noticing any sensations you might be feeling in your hands and fingers. Allowing your attention to move down to your knees. Noticing if you're holding any tightness or tension in your knees. Allowing your attention to move down to your ankles, your feet, and your toes. Just noticing any sensations you might be feeling. Taking a moment to just examine all of the muscles in your body, recognizing any areas of tension. And imagining breathing into those areas of tension and allowing them to relax. And knowing that this practice that we just did, this mindful noticing of tension in your body, only took us a couple minutes. And as you open your eyes and come back into the space, remind yourself, this is something small that I can do to take care of myself, strengthen my immune system, reduce inflammation in my body, help myself heal. I have the ability to do this. Head, shoulders, knees, and toes. So that is a very quick version of our 5 elements for health and healing.
Well, thank you, Sheri. I want to make sure we give everyone a chance to ask any questions they may have for you. So if anyone on the webinar has questions for Sheri, please look to the right of the screen. There's a question box there. Please put them in, and we'll give folks just a moment to take the time to do that. All right. Sheri, we have a question here. Says, I've tried to meditate and my mind is too busy. I'm not good at it. What should I do?
Right, so I guess my first piece of this would be to work away from that self-criticism piece, right? Mindfulness is a practice, and it's something that we can do in very small ways, a little bit at a time. I talk a little bit about the butterfly effect when I'm working with people, little tiny changes over time. And so to start with small mindful moments, to start with small things that you feel like you can do, our minds are busy places. They are going to wander. That's what they're supposed to do. So it's not that you're not good at it. You're noticing that your mind wanders. So to move away from the self-criticism and just be in the moment and notice it.
Thank you. And we actually have a comment from another participant along the same lines, which says, the same happens to me and I can't stop thinking. So thank you. That's very helpful, very helpful. And then we have one more question here. It says, play sounds great, but I have no time to do it. What do you suggest?
Yeah, so again, if we can think of really small ways to weave it into our day, and I like to kind of overlap things if we can. So, everybody has to sit down and have dinner. And so instead of just eating and just having dinner and cleaning up and running away from the table. We could have, joke of the day at dinner, and each person gets to pick a joke for that day, or, storytelling, or, sharing a funny video, or, as we're getting ready in the morning. One of the things I do often when I'm getting ready in the morning is I'm listening to a podcast, and I'm usually not trying to do at that point an educational podcast. I'm really trying to listen to something that's going to make me laugh or that is going to bring me joy. And so sometimes overlapping things, you're going to have to do it anyway. And so to try to overlap it with something that could bring you joy or make you smile or make you laugh can be a way to add some play in. We don't want to just play if we can take a vacation. And so I work 51 weeks of the year, and then I take 1 week off and I go on vacation and I play that week. We want to try to be able to sprinkle it in throughout our lives.
All right. Thank you very much. That's really helpful. So I want to thank you again for your time today, Sheri. This has been great information and recommendations. I hope that everyone has come away from Sheri's presentation with some new and useful information that they can implement to make their life a little more peaceful, help them feel better and more resilient. I'd like to ask everyone to please take a moment to please complete the 3-question evaluation at the close of this session. That'll be coming up in a moment. We very much value your feedback. It's important to help us keep these sessions fresh and relevant to everybody. Also, keep an eye on your inbox for a copy of the recording, and you can share that with friends and colleagues. Before I wrap up, I just want to let folks know about telemedicine benefits, including a benefit for behavioral health, which can help with stress and anxiety. This is particularly relevant during COVID-19. So in order to keep people healthy and prevent the spread of COVID-19, AllWays Health Partners, along with many other carriers, has significantly expanded coverage for telemedicine. We urge everyone to continue to keep up with appointments, particularly around condition management and for any new concerns. Behavioral health is a covered benefit for AllWays Health Partners members. And we just want to make sure folks remember that that's available. Call your customer service or even your provider if you need some help to access that. So thank you very much. And from both Sheri and from me, thank you all again, and be well.
Thank you.